Hard fact, you heard that tiny whisper from Aghogho. You've just heard the 5 p.m. news update as well. So it's time for the big hard fact, and that means that from now until 6, we're diving deep into one big issue in Nigeria today. And today, the issue is human rights. Last week, Human Rights Watch published its 2020 report on Nigeria, which looks back at human rights issues from last year. I am Sandra Ezekwesili.
And I am Oboh.
And today's big hard fact, every January, Human Rights Watch publishes a report for each country detailing major human rights issues from the previous year. So for the 2020 report, Hard Facts has read it all, and we want to tell you about it. We want to tell you what it says so that you can decide for yourself whether or not their assessment of the state of human rights in Nigeria is correct.
Yes, so we have a number of points that have been raised, and just like Sandra pointed out, they've highlighted this time 11 African countries, which include Nigeria, and they range from the western part of the continent to Central Africa, all the way to East, and then to North Africa. And Nigeria is looking at long-running conflict, which is what we did point out, and unfortunately, those coincide with increase in attacks by the terror group Boko Haram. And one big point before we delve and speak with our guests on today's program is despite claims by the federal government on increased security measures across the entire country, the Human Rights Report does highlight that the fighting by Boko Haram and security forces in the northeastern part of the countries have led to at least the deaths of 640 civilians. That was just for 2019, which unfortunately is huge. If you put in the context, 7,000 people, including 37 aid workers who have been consumed by the Boko Haram conflict since 2009, it just shows you that this conflict is not going anywhere far.
And we're looking at the elections. We're looking at freedom of expression. We're looking at freedom of the press. We're looking at insecurity. We're looking at the conduct of the police. So all of these are away, of course, from Boko Haram. And it really covered a lot of ground, the Human Rights Report. And here to help us make sense of all that terrain, we have a representative of one of the foremost human rights groups in the country, the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, CDHR. They've been working for 3 decades to promote the respect for human rights in Nigeria by all actors, including government. And today we have representing CDHR.
Yeah, the former president, Malaki Gwomade, who is also a constitutional lawyer. Malaki is joined by Kabir Adamo, who is a security expert who is vast in the understanding of what's going on in the northeastern part of the country, especially with rights as well as the security situation with respect to Boko Haram. Thank you very much, sir, for joining the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Aghogho. A pleasure to join you.
All right.
And hear your golden voice again.
Thank you very much, Malak, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
As usual, you are our most important guest. We're talking about you who's listening at home and you who's listening in your car. After all, you're the one whose human rights we're discussing. So in what ways do you believe your rights as a human were denied in Nigeria in 2019? Did you feel harassed? Did you feel oppressed? Did you feel disenfranchised in any way? Throughout the show, we want to take your calls. The Human Rights Watch report talks a lot about the situation in the Northeast from various angles. So I want us to start there. Human Rights Watch is claiming that 640 civilians were killed in the fighting between the military and Boko Haram last year. Malaki, the government has been insisting that Boko Haram has been, quote, technically defeated. How is this insistence that the war is won while fighting is ongoing affecting the human rights situation in the Northeast?
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to intervene on this matter. Let us be clear that the incidence of violation of human rights of Nigerians is not only perpetrated by the Boko Haram sect. As a matter of fact, studies and research conducted in the past points in the direction of law enforcement agencies as the greatest perpetrators of rights abuse in Nigeria. I'm sure that Boko Haram sect does not fall in that category. If that premise is laid, then we can move to the next step, which is to interrogate the report of Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch is an institution that I have come to know for a very long time now. And I can say categorically that they are not just particular, but thorough with respect to research and documentation.
Okay.
Now, having said that, let us therefore focus on this aspect that has bothered you. That is the nexus or relationship between the activities of some of these violent organizations in relation to the rights of Nigerians, particularly their right to life, which in our understanding is the primus right. If you lose your right to life under Section 33, you don't stand a chance of enjoying any other right. You can only be alive to walk. You can only be alive to talk, which is the expression we all talk about, and so on and so forth. So it is not, I'm not sure any person who is desirous of an improvement in the rights regime of Nigerians should doubt what is coming out. If you are quarreling with the estimation or the degree of that violation, that becomes a very subjective debate between you and the facts that you have. But what is common, what is accepted, and what is given is that the rights of Nigerians, particularly in the northeast, arising from the activities of the Boko Haram, and in the southeast, owing to the violent activities of bandits, to kidnappers in the southwest, and indeed all around the country. Those rights came under serious siege. And it is, you don't need to be a statistician to know that, or to have conducted any research. I mean, at the time, Nigerians were no longer taken aback that people were killed in bomb explosions or soft target activities. No, they were only interested in knowing the figure. And it took the government just to change the date and the figure and release the usual. So we had that challenge. We contended with it even up to the end of 2019. And what could be said, however, is that the federal government of Nigeria did not relent, as it were, in their determination, mark my word, determination to decimate the Boko Haram sect. Their claim that they were technically defeated is now open for Nigerians for a debate, because, lies are better told in English.
All right, let's hold that thought there. Let's hold that thought there while we get on board our second guest. We tried to connect with him before the conversation, but it didn't quite go through. So we'll ask that you please hold on while we get him on the phone so that we can all talk at the same time.
All right, welcome back, and we're now joined by Kabera Adamu, who is a security expert. Okay, we have Kabera Adamu and Malaki Ogoma to help look at the Human Rights Watch report for the year. And Kabera.
Yeah, good evening.
Great. Finally, we have full house, right? With Malaki over there. So Kabera can do his introduction also too on this report. I know Kabera has worked a great deal on the security situation in the northeastern part of the country. So first and foremost, the report is foreshadowed by what is going in the northeastern part of the country, the deaths that have happened, 650, I understand, for last year alone. The numbers continue to rise, and like we pointed out, Boko Haram as a terror threat appears to continue to be of great concern, not just to Nigeria, but also to the international community. Very quickly, in your assessment, what exactly is going on with Boko Haram?
It's a very dicey situation that one cannot answer in very simple terms. On the one hand, you have the counter-terrorism effort by the Nigerian government with the support of the multinational joint task force, seeing significant successes, actually. Then on the other hand, you have the insurgent groups that are currently manifesting some form of resilience, and they have demonstrated to a greater extent their ability to not only adapt, but to introduce new tactics in response to these successes by the Nigerian government. So perhaps in the course of the conversation, I'll explain what I mean here. But in summary, there has been success by both the Nigerian government in terms of the counter-insurgency operations, with the support of the multinational joint task force. And for the benefit of our listeners, the multinational joint task force was created in 2014 under President Goodluck Jonathan, and then it received some impetus under President Buhari. Its headquarters is in Chad, and it has about 4 countries: Chad, Niger, Nigeria, Benin, and Benin Republic, with a troop contribution of, I'm not sure of the number now, but what they have done is they have improved security around the border area, and so have limited the ability of the insurgent groups to move across various countries. On that, on the one hand. On the other hand, they've also agreed to allow the troops of either country to come into the neighboring country. So in the case of Nigeria, we've had Chadian troops, Cameroonian troops, Nigerian troops come into Nigeria, and they've supported the operations there. So there have been successes in that regard. And like I mentioned earlier on, the insurgents who have adapted, and we've seen them increase the ferocity of their attacks. So it's really difficult to say that there is no success. There have been successes, but unfortunately, the problem is still there with us 11 years into the insurgency.
Mr. Gumatu, according to the report, the army's decision to shut down its outposts across the northeast and gather its soldiers into so-called super camps has made the situation worse, because now so many communities no longer have nearby military protection from Boko Haram. How badly has the human rights situation in the northeast deteriorated since August, would you say?
Well, if the consequence of that decision has the direct effect that you related, namely that people are now living on their own, abandoned, then it is no longer this decision, it is an indiscretion, one that has negatively impacted and affected the people of that zone. I had made a preliminary statement that the fate of Nigerians living in those regions under review are not despicable. And this is to put it mildly. We do not know of any, perhaps my colleague Kabiru, who is an expert in security strategies, will educate us more. But once a people in a society governed by rule of law are exposed to the level of violence that our brothers and sisters in the northern part of this country, particularly the northeast, are exposed to, it you need to educate some of us who have very scant knowledge of security. Justification of withdrawing troops who have maintained the level of security that are hitherto experienced there. You need to educate us because, as it were, what became clear is that these violent sets and groups had a field day in such a manner that they were able to occupy. When you talk of occupation, you are actually talking of an extensive violence that gave you the edge to displace a people and take over their place of abode. And that you are doing that not for 2 seconds or 3 minutes or 1 hour, but that you take over, you stay there, you occupy the place. The only way there could be a corresponding response and a balancing of that aggression is to deal with that situation in a manner that they won't be in doubt that they don't own those places. Assuming without conceding, and this is where I'm rounding up, sorry about that.
Go ahead.
That the military, in their wisdom, has degraded these people and had rendered them almost ineffective in their usual manner of operation. Nigerians will be better convinced if, after that indiscretion that I talked about, there were no longer any form of attack. Look at what is happening in the U.S., the withdrawal of soldiers from both Syria and Afghanistan. It has generated a serious debate. I'll leave it at that point.
This is where I think, Abel, you'd have to come in. This is throwing the gauntlet to you on explaining to us, for example, the withdrawal of troops in certain areas, which the military hierarchy seems to suggest is the best way moving forward. Whereas a number of local actors, even international actors, I'm looking at the report from the UN Special Rapporteur, Agnes Callamard, which is even on the UN site, saying Nigeria is confronting nationwide regional global pressures such as population explosion, increased number of people living in poverty, climate change and desertification. She goes on to say these are reinforcing localized systems and countrywide pattern of violence, many of which are seemingly spinning out of control. So on the one hand, the government says this is what is going on. We are winning this war. On the other hand, we get this sort of things going on. Well, what's your response to Malachi's poser?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Nigerian Ministry of Defense.
Very true.
Yes, of course. Of course.
As a security expert and someone who operates in that environment, I have studied the issue here very well. By the way, I have operations in the Sahel region, including the northern part of Nigeria and the Lake Chad basin. So these dynamics are very, near to me. I understand them because I operate there. The creation of the super camp was born out of necessity. That's the first point I would like to emphasize. The forward operating bases of the Nigerian military were falling like cards, unfortunately. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. In a period, we documented 18 of such forward operating bases. And just for the benefit of our listeners, when the forward FOB falls, two major things happen. Firstly, lives are lost, and lives of soldiers. And you know how significant that is to any country. Then on the other hand, the enemy lays his hand on the weapons in the armory. Because what they do is they ransack the armory, take the weapons they want to take, and then destroy the ones they are not interested in. So the Nigerian military needed to come up with a new strategy. And we, at that time, were happy when the issue of super camp came up. Because like I've said earlier on, they are stopping two major things. They are limiting the number of soldiers that were dying. And then on the secondly, which was very important, they were stopping the enemy from acquiring weaponry. And if this war is going to end, that's something that must be done. So what we expected, and this is where I think the challenge is, I do not necessarily agree that, communities have been abandoned. No, not necessarily. The super camps were strategically located. They are still forming those super camps. The policy is not yet complete, quote unquote. So it's a transition and it's still ongoing. And what they've done is a strategic mapping of the location. And now the creation of these super camps were meant to serve two purposes, three purposes: protect the state, the location, allow mobility, that's movement between one super camp to another. In other words, any community that falls between two or three super camps will now have some form of umbrella protection from that super camp. But for that to happen, and that I think that this is what I would like to emphasize, for that to happen, you have to have excellent communication capabilities between the communities and the nearest super camp, and of course between one super camp and another camp. And unfortunately, that is currently missing. The second and very important thing, which is the modern day warfare, you have to have light and easily deployable platforms that would allow speedy response. And unfortunately, to this second element is missing. So, in summary, I am in support of the super camp strategy, and I think all Nigerians need to understand it and support it. However, for it to be effective, these other two things that I've mentioned need to be in place, and currently they are not in place. Now, what has happened is that the enemy has read the situation, just like, as an outsider, I've been able to read it, and the enemy is taking advantage of the situation. So what you have at the moment is a reduction in attack on communities, but highways are being blocked because that's a vulnerable point, distance between point A and point B, which is the highway that links two communities. They are being blocked almost on a daily basis, sometimes even repeatedly on a day. I'll give you an example. The the Maiduguri Damatu highway. This week alone, I've monitored more than 5 or 6 what we call unofficial vehicle checkpoints by the bad guys. They block them and have their day, sometimes for hours along that route. And the simple reason is because of those two elements I've mentioned: communication and then a lack of an available and easily deployable platform that will go and rescue those that are on the side. I know that there is possibly a move to create additional super camps along that route, but for now, what we have is just one super camp along that route. So all of these things are transitionary development, and I think the Nigerian military too is studying the situation and responding to it as it comes up. There are issues around funding, and perhaps in the course of the program we'll discuss the political economy of the funding of an insurgency and the unfortunate insinuation that corruption has crept in, just as was demonstrated by the governor of Borno State. We may also consider the state-level initiatives by the Borno State governor that it has been instrumental in the warfare. So there are so many things, unfortunately, that is affecting the insurgency and the counter-insurgency that it will be very difficult, to give a straightforward answer in some of these issues.
Which brings us to a big question. How what should be done to protect civilians in the war zone? And this is a question that is for you who's listening at home or in your car. Because according to this report, the Army's decision to shut down its outposts across the Northeast has made it harder for aid agencies, for instance, to get food and medical supplies and other relief to the communities safely. The UN, for instance, says that it has lost access to over 800 civilians in need of interventions, And then we also have this report saying that Boko Haram killed at least 405 children and abducted at least 105 others. They're constantly abducting children, both boys and girls, and research has shown that some of these children are put towards sex slavery, made child soldiers, used as suicide bombers. So what should be done to protect civilians in the war zone? What are your ideas? Let's hear them. 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. These are our studio numbers. Let's hear from you while we continue this conversation with our guests on the show today. We have a former president of CDHR and a security expert on the show. You can also send us messages via WhatsApp. WhatsApp is 080 959 75805. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll take your calls. We're going to ask our guests to please stay on the line. And yes, we're streaming this conversation on Facebook and on YouTube as well. Nigeria Info FM. Kabi Ademo is our security expert, and Malaki Ugwamadu is the former president. Committee for Defense of Human Rights, CDHR. I am Sandra Ezekwesili.
And I'm Aghogho Oboh.
Hard Facts will be right back. Welcome back to Hard Facts.
On Hard Facts today, we're talking about the Human Rights Watch report. The Human Rights Watch published the 2020 report on Nigeria. It looks at human rights issues from last year. Every January, Human Rights Watch publishes a report for each country detailing major rights issues from the previous year. And this report addresses a lot of issues that affect human rights. So we've got the terror of Boko Haram, the conduct of the military in the war against Boko Haram, the conduct of the police, the elections, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, insecurity. It really covered a lot of ground. And the first half of this show, we've spent it talking about Boko Haram because it's such a huge conversation. It's such a big conversation. And we've been getting help from our guests on the show.
Here, Kabir Adamu, security expert, and Malaki Ugwama, the former president, CDHR. Thank you, gentlemen, for staying on with us. All right. Okay, great. So let's continue with Kabir Adamu. Let me stay with you on Malaki on this one, because of the report saying, for example, that the loss of trust and confidence in public institutions has prompted Nigerians to take matters of protection into their own hands, which is leading to a proliferation of self-protecting armed militia and cases of jungle justice. But then a number of people will argue whether or not we need this sort of self-help in the way it is done. What's your thinking? Is this justifiable in the way we're having groups? And of course, in the wake of Amotekun in the southwestern region, what are your thoughts, Malaki?
So I usually very careful when you throw your questions because they are often very multifaceted. I think that taking it from the last point you made, the question about Amotekun speaks directly to the need for a functional federalism in a heterogeneous society such as we have. And I'm not sure this is a convenient time to go into that debate, except to say that initiative, as you already have in other parts of the country, is forcing that conversation in a manner that we might find some leeway out of that situation. Now, on the question of Human Rights Watch report, please let us as Nigerians be a bit humble and circumspect when some of these reports come out. I recognize that Nigeria is a sovereign country. I recognize that our fate actually lies in our hands. And I recognize that there is hardly any other country or group of persons that will be better positioned to solve the Nigerian problem other than Nigeria. But it is not just Human Rights Watch reports. In the course of the year gone by, we've seen several reports from different backgrounds, and organizations moving in the same direction. The reports of Amnesty International is largely in sync with what you are reeling out as the final report of those of us who are here, who are experiencing these situations, can testify that these are not numbers made up or statistics just thrown at us. I imagine that there are even by far more in number beyond the assessment that give the average statistics that we're reading now. So my take would be simple. Supposing we look at this report and juxtapose it, place it side by side with a chart that indicates the trend of events, and exercise some humility in accepting some of the areas where those reports have proved to be correct, and then aim at reforms around those areas. Because ultimately, as we say in law, the source of an evidence is immaterial. What is important is that evidence. What do you do with this report? You just throw it away because it's coming from an institution, a foundation, or organization that is not yours, or you subject it to some objective analysis to be able to aid what you are doing. Listening to my colleague, Kabiru, which is why I say he is vast in that area. I've listened to him a couple of times. You could see, like I did say, I said before he came on, I said, the government have shown determination. And that's my word. Now, has the determination translated into safety, which is a requirement and imposition of Section 14, Subsection 2B, that talks about the security and welfare of citizens as the primary responsibility of government? The answer, of course, is no. So therefore, if you are determined and interested in solving a problem, but that has not approximated or translated to what you intend to achieve, you need to therefore retool. And that is the point we're making. For me, it is that we need to deal with a number of issues to be able to get to the promised land. We have questioned the constitutionality of the model of government that we are practicing. It is not sufficient to say we have the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and operate unilaterally. It is not sufficient to look at the peculiarity of a federating unit and then head-on plunge that same society through a model that doesn't work. And so, from the question of Fomenteku to the decentralization of political power to fiscal federalism and so on and so forth, all of those issues will have to be cleared simultaneously with what we have. Unfortunately, because those things were not done, we're now harvesting the effect and implications of those indiscretions in the manner that we're having it in a very violent manner.
Okay, let's take a few calls. 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. In what ways do you believe your rights as a human were denied in Nigeria in 2019? Did you feel harassed? Did you feel oppressed? Did you feel disenfranchised in any way? Throughout the show, we did say that we're going to take your calls about that. We also want to know what you think can be done to protect civilians in the war zone. What do you think we can do to make that situation a bit more palatable?
In case you cannot call in, I can imagine lines are jammed. Talk to us via WhatsApp. Hey, Makushi, but let me say the WhatsApp number first. 0809 597 5805. You can talk to us on WhatsApp. If you've got any comments for our discussants, kindly let us know.
Maybe you want to take the number slowly.
Okay. Do you know someone call in and give me the numbers, eh?
Okay.
WhatsApp again. 0809 597 5805. Again, 0809 597 5805 on WhatsApp.
Yes.
Davo, over to you.
Thank you, Aghogho and Sandra.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, to me, my rights have been trampled several times, but the ones I even pity the most, as I speak, I visit the prison, Ikoyi and Kirikiri. There are people who have been picked on the street, even till today, till tomorrow it happened, and who don't have phone, and they will be there languishing in prison for years. Some of them even died there. There are so many people, even the lawyers, the media is really not doing enough. I must be sincere. And then one of the best things to protect people, let me not lie to you, I read history very well. During the Biafran War and the Nigerian War, on the Nigerian side and the Biafran both, child soldiers took part in those wars. Even the Boko Haram were going, a northerner is there in the studio with you. You can ask him to confirm if I'm lying. I come from the north. Boko Haram were going to houses, picking people by force to come and join them in order to increase their forces. As I speak, there's unemployment in Nigeria. Tell me the federal government just put a huge sums of money, maybe 50K for volunteers, and they will take their name. After the war, Boko Haram is being defeated, they will give them work, even send them abroad for scholarship. I am telling you, I will volunteer. I will take part. Just is the same thing with this Omotekun that is happening. In Jos, during the war, in a crisis in Jos, Justice Nick Toby Commission of Inquiry was set up. The day they sent up the person to come and pick up the white paper to Goodluck Jonathan in Abuja, that helicopter exploded. Inside was John Haruna, a conspiracy within the government of the government.
A conspiracy that you're now sharing.
I cannot come out on air to start saying, but the truth is that John Haruna was picked to be the future IG. But he died in that place.
Yeah, but all of these things are speculative at best. But it brings me to a very important point that Davo raised, with people who are picked up randomly and who are languishing in Nigerian prisons, right? We have part of this report, the human rights mentioning the presidential panel of inquiry into SARS. The human rights mentions this unpublished report, right? But now I want you on the hot seat, who's the former president of CDHR, you and the rest of civil society. Isn't it your job to put pressure on government to release all these reports? I'm saying all these reports because this report points to government setting up a judicial panel to probe allegations of war crimes and rights abuses by the military, for instance, right? And that report hasn't been made public. And that's not the only report that hasn't been made public. We still don't have the findings of the panel of inquiry into the role of the military in the River State elections. So is there a concerted effort to hide the conduct of Nigeria's servicemen, and why is the civil society not pushing harder for these reports to be released, Mr. Wamadu?
Well, let's put it this way. First is that I don't think it will be important to be on the defense when some of these issues are raised. On the contrary, I would think that the best way out is to explore better ways of doing what we have been doing. If you call it underreporting, I can proceed, but I must tell you that speaking for CDHR, which is the leadership of which I just celebrated in October last, a lot is happening. First is that it is truly a mass-based movement all across the country.
That's quite unfortunate.
Hello, Malaki. Okay.
Am I there?
You're here.
Yes, you're back on.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I was making the point that we had a very serious leap in the enactment of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which is an enactment of the National Assembly that came into effect in 2015. Section 34 of that act speaks to the need for every chief judge of a state in the federation to constitute a committee of magistrates who shall be designated to visit all the detention facilities within the jurisdiction where he or she operates. The whole idea is to ensure that persons who are otherwise not supposed to be in those detention facilities are released. To review the bail conditions that some of them may have been given, and then to even grant bail to the deserving suspects or accused persons. That session is as wide as that. What we did in CDHR, speaking for CDHR in particular, was to write all the chief judge or justices in the states, urging them to invoke that session and designate the magistrates as required by law. We made tremendous progress in that. From state after state, Delta, Oboh, Oyo, rivers, and so on and so forth. So many persons who were randomly picked, who had no fools, like somebody said, or even fine, got released, and we documented this. So if you complement that with perhaps this report, the enforcement of this report that you are talking about, you could see that we'll be making some tremendous. But mark you, the civil society is not. It's not so much about. It exists because of the weakness, the vacuum, or inability of the state to discharge their responsibilities. Secondly, there are no rules of engagement, as it were. I mean, if you are passionate about any issue affecting the country, it could be environmental, it could be health, it could be political, it could be social. Civil society groups can be built on. So much as you hear about so many civil society, many are focused, some are even on issues of maybe tuberculosis, health, HIV, and so on. All of those ones do not go into the business of securing the release. Ours is Committee for Defense of Human Rights, and we double on daily basis across the country with very limited resources to do all of this. I'm not saying that there are no rooms for improvement. But I'm saying that we have always partnered with the media to also report the much that is done, just so that the society that is left on its own will know precisely what to do in the event of the violation of their rights. We have the Legal Aid Council. I hope you remember that. We have the National Human Rights Council, National Human Rights Commission. These are institutions of government that are supposed to discharge this responsibility. Budgets are made, allocations are made, to ensure. In short, in the case of Legal Aid Council, which came into existence in the 70s, I think 1973, up until Professor Ode Kalu became the chairman, very little was known. So these are the kind of things that the media can also help to bring to this, bring serious light in a manner that put them at least sufficiently on the to discharge the functions of the office.
All right, let me take one or two more calls, and then we'll come back to that matter of SARS, because it affects a lot of the people who are listening to us right now. If you just joined us, welcome. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili, and today we're discussing the Human Rights report for 2020 on Nigeria. We've got two guests on the show. One of them is the former President Committee for Defense of Human Rights, Malaki Ugwamadu. And then we also Ugwamadu. My apologies. Ugwamadu. And then we also have a security expert, Kabir Adamu, on the show with us. And we've been trying to go through the human rights report that is published every January for each country, detailing major human rights issues from the previous year. And what we want to know is what you think about your rights as a Nigerian in Nigeria. What did you think of your rights in 2019? Do you feel like they were upheld? Do you feel like they were denied? Did you feel oppressed? Did you feel harassed? Were you disenfranchised in any way? We've talked about war. We've talked about the conduct of security forces in Nigeria. We've gone from talking about, because this report has a whole section dedicated to looking at the problems in the conduct of security forces. So we've gone from the military, we're talking about SARS now, and we're going to go back to SARS after we take one or two calls. 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. Hello. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Thanks for calling. What's your name?
My name is Mr. Richard.
Welcome, Mr. Richard. You've got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, based on the topic and the question, I've been denied human rights for many years in the area of pension. I've been working without pension, as a contract worker for years. There are no pension because the government has failed to make a law to guide such employment. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Where do you work? Do you want to tell us where you work?
Yeah, I work as a security officer, contract guard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And contract guards do not get a pension?
No pension. I've been writing series of reports, but no government is able to respond to my report. So that's that.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling to share that with us. That's a huge problem that you find that a lot of Nigerian employees actually share in common. But let me come back to that matter about SARS. Kabir, every day you see complaints from citizens about SARS officers stopping or arresting them for carrying laptops or expensive phones or even a particular hairstyle. We all know it's illegal. We all know police command has officially said that it should stop. And we all know that it's still happening. What actual practical steps can be taken to put an end to this harassment? I'm asking you because you're the security expert on the show.
Yes, I will answer it in two folds. Firstly, I think our leaders need to appreciate the correlation between this poor human rights status that we unfortunately enjoy and insecurity in the country. Some people don't seem to understand that there is a huge correlation. And, anger, frustration leads people to be desperate sometimes or attempt to even frustrate the system, as it were, when the same system that's supposed to protect them is the one now oppressing them. So that's the first thing I would like to mention. The second point, which you've laid out, the implementation of the law by SARS that unfortunately subjects Nigerians to this inhuman treatment. I see it as a response to the emergence of so-called Yahoo boys, and certain elements of the society have been profiled as belonging to that class, so-called Yahoo boys. And so in their efforts to investigate, these SARS officers and several other security officials now arrest certain people that stick or fall into that profile view that they already have. So a young man who has dreadlock, or who is dressed very nicely, or is carrying an expensive phone, or they go to nightclubs. Just yesterday, I think I was reading, they went into a nightclub and arrested, I think, about
90 people.
Exactly. So profiling, clearly, which as a security expert, the study of profiling and its effect on criminology and all that has been done extensively. So it leads us back to the issue of the training that these SARS officers have received. And on the other hand, it leads us to what kind of control mechanism has the police institution as an agency put in place to ensure that their staff do not go beyond their mandate. So clearly, what we are seeing is a misrepresentation of the mandate of the SARS and even the DSS and other EFCC is guilty of that. So with specific response to your question, what do we do? We continue to interrogate this. Remember, it was the effort of one individual on social media that led to the reform, as it were, of SARS. So I think we need to continue interrogating it. We shouldn't get tired. Speak about it, take videos, because today, every Nigerian, as it were, once you have a smartphone, you have a platform to broadcast and publish.
That's right.
So take videos of such things, publish it, continue to interrogate the activities of this element, and then, of course, the various arms of government, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, to an extent, have a role to play. At a point, they have no choice but to listen to this citizen journalism that would force a change in this unfortunate development in our nation.
All right, we've got a few messages on WhatsApp.
Yeah, let's see what we got on WhatsApp. Government can only protect citizens by giving them a sense of belonging. That alone fuels criminality more. Use public funds to make inroads within the rural communities. Make laws that could effectively protect the poor from possible oppression. And it goes on and on. That's Ajulu Chukwu. Ebuka says, good evening. Unemployment, in a way, is raising some of these insecurity issues, which I will say is dampening human rights. So if the government really would solve the state of poverty in the country, I think to some extent there will be relief in society. Mayor from Aja is a long one, says Sandra. I'm not sure you finished reading this post.
No, we will not,
we
because
will
we're
not
out
finish.
of time.
We're out of time. But I see everything you've written here. He says, war is the biggest economy, big budgets all over the world. The President General has a nod to this world to reduce the population of illiterates, and it goes on and on. But I'm sure Kabe would know more about politics of insecurity and all
war.
of that and all. But thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. There's never enough time on the big hard facts. It's almost
you.
like 1 hour is never enough.
Our time flies when you're having a great conversation.
Yes, indeed.
Great thanks to Kabera Damu and Malaki Ogwomadu for being great discussants, and to everyone who called in.
You were all
and
great.
sent messages on WhatsApp.
If you just joined in, you can catch the conversation on Facebook. If you missed a lot of it, just catch up online, Facebook and YouTube, Nigeria Info FM. That's what we talked about on Big Hard Fact. On Community Report today.
Yeah, Chukwudi and I looked at the Abuleba explosion and whether lessons have been learnt or not.
And on the big three, we brought to you Rotimi Amechi's tour of the Lagos-Ibadan Railway project. It was a recap. Joy was in the studio. We also told you that Boko Haram executed CAN executive and cut Maiduguri from the power grid. And we brought to you as well police blocking the venue of the pro-Amotekun rally. We had a great show. We're back again tomorrow doing the same thing at 3:15. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so glass ceiling returns. And on the glass ceiling tomorrow, let's talk about this group that was protesting the rights of young women in NYSC to wear skirts if they want to. Did you see those pictures?
Oh yes, it's a big debate going on now whether or not that should happen. I think it's something
should women be allowed to wear skirts for NYSC? Let's have that conversation tomorrow at 4 p.m. It will stream as well and it will go up on our podcast. And we have a special report coming from our newsroom tomorrow as well at 5 p.m. The state of the airports. Yes?
Look forward to that. State of the airports. We've spoken with a big week with the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria.
Yes, and until we're back then, I am Sandra Ezekwesili on all of my social media.
And I'm Aghogho Oboh. Listen, Conversation with Rufai coming up next after the news with Gordon Osukwo. Yalla.
Those are your hard facts, Lagos. Good night.
This is Hard Facts.